We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
One evening, that is all it took. A quiet dinner, a games night, a son-in-law who offered to drive his mother-in-law home, a woman who walked through her garage door and was never seen again. That was January 31st, 2026, in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona. And the man who dropped her off that night, the last known person to see 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie alive, has become the most scrutinized figure in one of the most watched missing persons cases in the country. His name is Tommaso Cioni. He is married to Annie Guthrie, Nancy's daughter. He teaches 6th grade biology in Tucson. He plays in a local band. By every community account, he and Annie were deeply rooted, well-liked, and trusted in this city. And yet his name has been spoken in press conferences, in FBI briefings, in newsroom debates, and in millions of online comments since the morning of February 1st, the morning that Nancy Guthrie did not show up for church, the morning her friends called, the morning that changed everything. What Tommaso Cioni has said publicly and what it reveals about this case is what we are going to walk through today. Carefully, with confirmed facts separated from reported information, with analytical inference clearly labeled, because in a case this serious, the community watching it deserves nothing less. Let's go back to that evening. On January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie had dinner at Annie and Tommaso's home in Tucson. It was a games night, ordinary, the kind of evening a family repeats without thinking about it, because there is always supposed to be another one. At approximately 9:50 in the evening, Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy home to her Catalina Foothills residence. She walked in through the garage door. He watched her go inside. That moment, that ordinary, forgettable moment, became the last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie by someone who knew her. What happened in the next 4 hours has defined every single day of this investigation. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera at Nancy's home was disconnected. Not malfunctioned, not powered down by a storm or a surge. Disconnected. At 2:12 in the morning, the camera registered a motion alert. The FBI later recovered footage from deep within Google's back-end systems, because the local recording had been disabled. And what that footage showed stopped investigators in their tracks. A masked individual, armed, carrying a distinctive black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack, standing on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, tampering with the camera, approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, average build, and a face that no one has yet been able to name publicly. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with her Apple devices. 3 timestamps, each one a door closing. And when Nancy's friends arrived the following morning to take her to a church live stream she never missed, every single door was already shut. Authorities arrived at the Catalina Foothills home at 12:15 in the afternoon. What they found was not the scene of a woman who had wandered off. They found blood, droplets on the front doorstep, confirmed by investigators to be Nancy's. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stated publicly that he believed Nancy Guthrie had been abducted, taken against her will. The FBI was called in, so was U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and a multi-agency investigation began that has now stretched across nearly 3 months, with no arrest, no named suspect, and no confirmed location for an 84-year-old woman who requires daily medication and has a pacemaker implanted in her chest. Now here is the detail that has sat at the center of every investigative theory since the first day. There were no signs of forced entry at Nancy's home. No broken lock, no shattered window, no door kicked in. Whoever entered that house in the early hours of February first came in without forcing their way. Which means one of 2 things. Either Nancy let that person in herself, or the person already had access. Her phone was still inside the house. Her medication was untouched. She had not packed a single bag. She had not left a note. She had not called anyone to say she was going somewhere. She was simply gone from inside a home that showed no physical evidence of a break-in. That detail, means of no forced entry, is not a minor procedural observation. It is the sentence that narrows the entire suspect field immediately. It means this investigation has never been about a stranger who kicked down a door. It has always been about someone who knew how to get inside, someone who understood the property, someone who knew the layout, the cameras, the entry points, and the routines of the woman who lived there. And standing at the edge of that circle of familiarity, from the very first day, was the man who had dropped Nancy off just hours before Tommaso Cioni had been connected to this family for decades. He married Annie Guthrie in 2006. He knew the neighborhood. He knew the family structure. He had been inside that home. He knew the people whose lives revolved around it. And in the days after Nancy's disappearance, reporter Ashley Banfield, reporting on her YouTube channel, stated that her law enforcement sources had named Tommaso Cioni as the prime suspect in the case. She reported that Annie's car had been towed and examined, and that there was what she described as a connection between the vehicle and Cioni. Those words reached Savannah Guthrie. According to reporting from sources cited by multiple outlets, Savannah was heartbroken when she heard her brother-in-law being publicly named. Insiders who spoke to journalist Rob Shooter described wounds that cut deep into the family. Wounds, according to those sources, that may never fully heal. But then, on February 16, 2026, Sheriff Chris Nanos stood at a podium and made a statement that was as direct as anything spoken publicly in this case. To be clear, he said, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Tommaso Cioni has not been charged with any crime. He was formally cleared as a suspect by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. All persons referenced in this investigation are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. That is not a disclaimer attached to the end of a sentence. That is the factual status of this investigation as it stands today. But being cleared as a suspect does not mean that every question surrounding the timeline has been answered. And the question that investigators are still working through, the question that cannot be resolved by a press statement, is what those 4 hours between 10 o'clock on January 31st and 1:47 in the morning actually contained. There is a piece of evidence in this case that almost no one has taken the time to fully explain. And it may be the most precise record of what Nancy Guthrie experienced that night. Her pacemaker. At 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with her Apple devices. Every report mentions that timestamp. Almost no one explains what it actually means, and more importantly, what it does not mean. The sync stopped. The device did not. Modern implantable pacemakers are not passive instruments. They record cardiac data continuously in real time. They flag and timestamp sudden rate changes beyond physician-defined thresholds. They log rhythm irregularities automatically. Many include accelerometers that detect physical movement. All of this runs on the device's own implanted battery, completely independent of any external connection, any phone, any app, any network. What that means in this investigation is specific and significant. The moment at 2:28 when Nancy's pacemaker stopped talking to her phone was the moment its external transmission pathway closed. The internal log kept running, kept recording, kept time-stamping every cardiac event her body produced during the hours that investigators are still trying to fully reconstruct. The human body responds to fear in physiologically predictable ways. Acute fear onset produces a sudden, significant elevation in heart rate. In an 84-year-old woman with a pre-existing cardiac condition, that response would still be present, and it would be detected, logged, and time-stamped by the device in her chest down to the second. If Nancy Guthrie became aware of a threat inside her home that night, her heart rate would have responded immediately. And the pacemaker would have captured that moment with a precision that no camera, no witness, and no secondhand account can replicate. This is analytical inference based on the documented capabilities of implantable cardiac monitoring devices. It has not been confirmed as a finding by law enforcement. But reporting from sources connected to this investigation indicated that authorities sought access to the pacemaker data through a warrant served on the device manufacturer. That internal log, if investigators have obtained it, may constitute the most precise biological record of what Nancy experienced in the hours nobody can yet fully account for. And it is a record that no one in that house could have disabled. Now let's talk about the figure this investigation has been trying to name since February. The FBI released footage of a masked, armed individual at Nancy's front door in the early hours of February 1st. This person, now widely known in media coverage as Porch Guy, stands approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, carries the black Ozark Trail backpack, and moves with a deliberateness that investigators have been studying since the footage was recovered or from Google's back-end systems. Online communities and true crime commentators almost immediately pointed at Tommaso Cioni as a possible match. The physical similarities, the timing, the connection to the family, it was enough to fuel enormous speculation. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer addressed this directly and on the record. "It is so absurd to me," she stated. "There is no physical corroboration when you look at Porch Guy's face that we can see, when you look at Porch Guy's mannerisms, when you look at how he walks compared to Tommaso. There is nothing there to compare." She added that she believes the suspect is much younger than Cioni, who is believed to be in his early 50s. People want to say that he is involved because, and literally this is all they have, because he was the last to see Nancy, Coffindaffer continued. Well, let's be clear. He was not the last to see Nancy. Porch Guy, minimally, and others were the last to see Nancy alive. Porch Guy's identity remains one of the most important unresolved facts in this entire investigation. He is the person on that porch. He is the person on camera. He is the one whose face is obscured by a mask. And he is the person that every investigative resource, FBI, forensics, digital recovery, is working toward identifying. DNA evidence has emerged as a potential pathway forward. Hair recovered from the scene was submitted for forensic analysis. A genetic genealogist working on the case stated that DNA extracted from rootless hair can sometimes link suspects even when traditional evidence is limited. Officials confirmed that multiple labs across the United States are examining the material. The process, they said, could take several months. Now let's talk about the institution assigned to lead this investigation, because context matters, and the context here is deeply troubling. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has led the department responsible for the ground investigation into Nancy's disappearance. On March 24th, 2026, the Pima County Deputies Organization, representing more than 300 deputies, held a formal vote. The options were no confidence and resign, or confidence and continue. 241 deputies voted for no confidence. 65 abstained. Not one deputy voted to keep him. That vote did not happen in a vacuum. The Arizona Republic obtained employment records showing that Nanos was suspended 8 times during his early career at the El Paso Police Department. He resigned from El Paso in 1982 in lieu of termination, a fact he had not disclosed to the Pima County Sheriff's Department or to the public for more than 40 years. The longest suspension came after a 1982 incident in which a handcuffed robbery suspect was struck repeatedly until he suffered severe blood loss and was hospitalized. A supervisor's notice at the time stated that his reactions had gone beyond reasonable force. Pima County Supervisor Matt Hines said publicly that Nanos's 42-year career with the Pima County Department appeared to be based on fraud. The Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to invoke a territorial-era law requiring Nanos to answer questions under oath. A recall effort is active and requires more than 120,000 signatures by mid-June to force a special election. But it does not stop there. Dr. Richard Carmona, former United States Surgeon General and a man who spent 3 decades with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, told News Nation that Sheriff Nanos made a critical error by personally ordering the crime scene at Nancy's Catalina Foothills home reopened and before it had been fully processed. Footage emerged of a pizza delivery vehicle crossing the front lawn while the scene was still active. "Once it has been corrupted, that is the end of it," Carmona said. "You cannot reconstitute a crime scene." And a law enforcement insider cited by News Nation confirmed that the sergeant initially placed in charge of the homicide unit had never personally led a homicide investigation before Nancy's case. That is the institutional reality inside which this investigation has been operating for nearly 3 months. Here is an honest accounting of where this case stands. Confirmed facts, reported information, and what remains entirely unknown. What is confirmed on the public record is this: Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was reported missing from her home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, on the morning of February 1st, 2026. She was born Nancy Ellen Long on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She had lived in Tucson for more than 5 decades. Her 3 children are Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy home on the night of January 31st at approximately 9:50 in the evening. He is the last known person to have seen her. He was formally cleared as a suspect by the Pima County Sheriff's Department on February 16, 2026. Nancy's doorbell camera went offline at 1:47 in the morning. A motion alert was captured at 2:12. The FBI recovered footage of a masked, armed individual at the front door. Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with her Apple devices at 2:28 in the morning. Bloodstains at the scene were confirmed to be Nancy's. Sheriff Nanos confirmed the abduction was targeted. Multiple ransom notes demanding cryptocurrency payment were sent to media outlets. 2 deadlines passed without the family paying. The family offered a $1 million reward on February 24th. The FBI's separate $100,000 reward remains active. What has been reported but not officially confirmed by law enforcement on the record includes the details of the pacemaker data warrant, the full scope of what DNA analysis has produced, and the specific investigative conclusions drawn from the security footage recovery and digital forensics. What is still entirely unknown is the most important thing: where Nancy Guthrie is. What happened between 10 o'clock on the night of January 31st and the moment the camera went dark. Who the masked individual on the porch is, and whether the evidence being assembled by the FBI, the pacemaker data, the DNA, the footage, the digital trail, has already produced an answer that investigators are not yet ready to say out loud. This community has watched this case with a sustained, specific, evidence-based attention that has consistently been ahead of the public record. Independent investigators walked areas behind properties connected to this case and recovered physical evidence. Forensic analysts in online communities identified behavioral markers in the doorbell footage. Former federal agents named specific investigative tactics on the record that had not yet been visibly deployed. That kind of attention matters, because the investigation that is supposed to be leading the search is operating under a cloud of institutional failure that nobody asked for and that Nancy Guthrie's family did not deserve. Here is the question we want you to leave in the comments. Retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer said clearly and on the record that the masked figure on Nancy's porch guy, is not Tommaso Cioni. That whoever that person is, they are much younger and they were the last people to see Nancy alive. If porch guy is someone entirely outside the family, someone who came to that house with a gun and a backpack and a plan, what does that change about how you understand this case? And do you believe that the FBI, operating alongside a department in crisis, has already quietly identified that person and is building a case in the background? Leave your analysis below. This community's collective attention on this investigation has value. It always has. If you have been following this case here and are not yet subscribed, now is the time. Every confirmed development in the search for Nancy Guthrie is covered on this channel with verified sources, name facts, and the kind of sustained attention that a case this serious demands. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1st, 2026. She is 84 years old. She requires daily medication. Her family is waiting. And this channel will be here for every answer that follows. If you have any information related to her disappearance, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. You can do so completely and safely anonymously. A reward of up to $1 million is available for information leading to her recovery. The FBI has its own separate $100,000 reward. Please use those resources if you know anything. This video is produced for informational and educational purposes only. All facts presented as confirmed are sourced from verified mainstream media reporting and on-record public statements, including reporting from News Nation, the Associated Press, Fox News, the Arizona Republic, and official statements from the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. Tommaso Cioni was formally cleared as a suspect by the Pima County Sheriff's Department on February 16, 2026. No individual has been publicly named as a suspect in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie by law enforcement. All persons referenced are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. Elements described as reported or according to sources are attributed accordingly and have not been independently confirmed by law enforcement on the record. Analytical inferences, including those related to pacemaker technology and forensic methodology, are explicitly labeled as such throughout. This channel has no affiliation with the Guthrie family, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, or any law enforcement agency.